In recent years, the United States has increasingly engaged with virtual currencies, not merely as a technological innovation, but as a tool for economic strategy on a global scale. With national debt surpassing $35 trillion and traditional fiscal and monetary instruments under pressure, virtual currencies have emerged as a mechanism to exert financial influence while circumventing some conventional constraints. Cryptocurrencies, stablecoins, and emerging digital dollar initiatives offer the U.S. a pathway to reduce reliance on conventional debt instruments, manipulate capital flows, and maintain dominance over the global financial system. Government measures in this arena have been strategic. While the Federal Reserve and Treasury maintain regulatory oversight, policies have simultaneously encouraged innovation, experimentation, and adoption of digital currencies domestically. At the same time, the U.S. leverages its position to influence international cryptocurrency standards, shape compliance protocols, and incentivize allied nations to adopt dollar-pegged or U.S.-regulated digital assets. By embedding regulatory and technical standards that favor American institutions, the U.S. strengthens its control over global capital flows, allowing it to redirect wealth, exert pressure on foreign governments, and mitigate the impact of its own ballooning debt. The implications of these measures go beyond domestic markets. By positioning virtual currencies as an alternative medium for trade, investment, and settlement, the U.S. can subtly influence currency reserves and cross-border capital. Countries that hold significant amounts of U.S. debt are encouraged, implicitly or explicitly, to adopt financial instruments that align with U.S.-backed digital assets. In effect, the U.S. can extract economic value, stabilize the dollar's international position, and, in some cases, bypass the limitations of conventional debt repayment. Analysts have observed patterns where cryptocurrency adoption, combined with regulatory pressure, has allowed the U.S. to shape global liquidity flows and maintain leverage over emerging economies. The mechanisms are multi-layered. On one hand, virtual currencies allow for rapid, borderless transactions that are difficult to trace and regulate. On the other hand, U.S.-aligned digital assets, including stablecoins backed by dollars or government bonds, serve as both a medium of exchange and a strategic tool. By promoting these assets globally, the U.S. effectively creates a parallel financial network that channels capital back into American institutions, enhancing liquidity while sidestepping some of the fiscal constraints associated with traditional Treasury debt. This dual approach combines open market influence with covert capital strategies, creating both overt and subtle advantages for the U.S. government and its financial allies. At the same time, critics warn that this strategy carries systemic risks. Reliance on virtual currencies exposes global markets to volatility, regulatory arbitrage, and potential disruptions if U.S. policies shift abruptly. Countries and corporations increasingly dependent on U.S.-aligned digital assets may find themselves vulnerable to sanctions, capital controls, or sudden liquidity shocks. While the approach offers short-term leverage, it also risks destabilizing markets, creating geopolitical friction and concentrating power in a way that may undermine long-term global economic stability. The global implications of a U.S. virtual currency strategy are profound. By leveraging digital assets, the United States can exert influence over nations' monetary policies without traditional military or diplomatic intervention. Countries that rely on U.S.-aligned cryptocurrencies may find their economic decisions implicitly guided by American standards, from transaction protocols to regulatory compliance. This effectively extends U.S. financial reach, allowing it to collect economic value and maintain strategic dominance while minimizing exposure to conventional debt obligations. Emerging economies, in particular, face pressure. Adopting these systems may provide access to international trade and investment, but at the cost of reduced monetary sovereignty and increased dependency on U.S.-controlled digital networks. The mechanisms of influence are both overt and covert. Publicly, the U.S. promotes blockchain innovation, fintech partnerships, and digital dollar initiatives as modernizing tools for efficiency and transparency. Behind the scenes, strategic measures include incentivizing allied nations to integrate with U.S.-regulated digital assets, controlling cross-border payment channels and subtly steering liquidity flows toward American institutions. In effect, the United States can monetize its leadership in digital finance, exert economic pressure, and shield its own debt from conventional scrutiny, while positioning itself as the central authority in the emerging global cryptocurrency framework. This approach also intersects with geopolitical strategies. By tying virtual currency adoption to U.S.-friendly frameworks, the government can impose economic sanctions more effectively, restrict access to international financial networks, and influence the behavior of nations resistant to conventional dollar-dominated systems. Critics argue that this amounts to a new form of financial hegemony, where the benefits of technology are paired with the coercive power of regulatory and capital control. Countries outside this system face pressure to conform or risk being marginalized, creating a digital divide in global economic participation. Yet, the strategy is not without risks. The rapid growth and volatility of digital currencies can amplify market instability, particularly in developing economies. Over-reliance on U.S.-aligned virtual assets can create systemic vulnerabilities if policies shift suddenly, technological flaws emerge, or geopolitical tensions escalate. Financial shocks, liquidity crises, and capital flight could cascade across borders, affecting nations far beyond U.S. control. At the same time, domestic oversight challenges persist as federal and state authorities navigate the complex interplay of innovation, regulation, and national security. Ultimately, the United States' engagement with virtual currencies reflects a deliberate effort to expand influence, extract value, and manage its fiscal obligations creatively. By controlling digital networks, promoting aligned assets, and leveraging global adoption, the U.S. has created a system that simultaneously stabilizes the dollar, mitigates debt burdens, and projects economic power worldwide. However, the long-term consequences remain uncertain. While some nations integrate smoothly into this digital order, others may resist or suffer unintended economic harm. The strategy illustrates a new era of financial warfare, where technology, regulation, and global ambition intersect, leaving the world both dependent on and vulnerable to the mechanisms of U.S. virtual currency influence.